Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to day number 2 of the SPL promotional tournament. 10 teams still exist as of right now, but that is going to be changing pretty soon. It's Gormizer. I got Trelly on the desk with me, and Trelly, we are in the promotion tournament. We are starting to get into the thick of things. I guess technically tomorrow is like the true thick of things. It's like the middle of the week. I don't know if that's how that works.
I didn't even know if the thick of things was the middle, but that makes sense.
I have no idea. I'm just making
if
it up as I go along, man.
Should be.
Yeah, if it's not what it is, it's what it should be. We've got a lot that has been going on, a lot of Smite that is being played this week, and of course, for those of you who are curious as to why there's so much Smite, it's 5 full days, the 22nd, which was yesterday, going up till Sunday the 26th. We've got 10 teams that are competing in a double elimination bracket. The top 2 will qualify for the SPL. One of those teams is found Saturday, one of those teams is found Sunday. Every day we're beginning here at 11. It's because there's a lot of Smite that we got to cover. 4 best of 3s yesterday, another 4 that we're going to be going through today. And if you wanted to see how those have been shaking out, yesterday was a bunch of 2-0s. The Tanuki, the Scorpions, the Storm, and the Hounds finding wins. And so what we are going to end up seeing up first is the Wargs and the Tanuki a little bit later. After that set, the Gladiators taking on the Storm. Those will be the last 2 teams that are, kind of new, quote-unquote, to the tournament at our first look at what they're going to have. And our top 2 seeds on top of that. So something I'm very excited to see what they have to offer. And then a little later today, we're going to be watching the Titans, the Valkyries, the Sages, and the Wardens. 2 of those teams, Trelly, are going to be sent home today. There are 2, we have 10. Yesterday we ended, we still had 10. When we finish today, it's only going to be 8. When we finish tomorrow, it's going to be 6. When we finish the day after, it's going to be 4. We are going to be just chopping them left and right from here on out.
Well, you made it very simple for me. So if that confuses you, just remember, you got to win. Simple as that. If you're winning out, you have absolutely nothing to worry about.
No concerns whatsoever.
Yeah, if you're in the loser's bracket and you lose, well, then you're going home.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be complicated. But the first match, maybe a little less complicated, at least on paper. Theoretically, it's less complicated. The team that we saw yesterday, the Tanuki, we'll maybe touch on in a little bit because they found some success that maybe people weren't expecting, a very surprising win. The Wargs are the team not only just behind me, but the team that I think everybody was the most excited for coming into this.
Yeah,
I remember our predictions graphic. Every single caster had the Wargs on that list, and it was just a matter of who was the other team. And it's because this is a team that has a lot of familiar names on it if you've been around for a while. So already, you can see actually Crimson sitting in the mid there, Sam sitting a little closer, Neil Ma, the coach, sitting behind them. Missing from the room, and maybe joining them now, there's Gamma. As the support player, Aquarius, who's going to be sitting in that chair closest to us. And then on the far end, when he does end up joining the booth, Stuart. So, Trelly, as far as teams go, I can't think of a single player on this team that doesn't contribute to it being a stacked roster.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This was definitely, I was going to say fan favorite, caster favorite. We all thought on paper they look like the most stacked roster and definitely have. I believe the phrase we used was, if this team does not qualify for SPL, they tossed, they threw. They should, in theory, have a pretty free ride if they play to their strengths. And all 5 of these players, I guess 6 if you count Neil, do their job, right? And if that's the case, they should have a free ride. But as we saw yesterday, there's a lot of talent in this tournament. There's a lot of young players that want to make their name known, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some bumps in the road.
A lot of upset potential.
Yeah, a lot of upset potential. That's exactly what I'm talking about, and it's exciting to see. However, the Wargs just look, on paper, like the best team in this tournament, and they've got a lot of talent as well.
A lot of it is, you've got, I'm going to even just up it to a star-studded roster of 6, right, including coach. How well do the pieces come together? It's not just, okay, are all of you individually good players. We know that. We done been seen that. It's the rest of it that is going to be maybe the question marks that are there. Also nice to have your frontline synergy, right? Aquarius, Gamma having played together. Looked pretty good on a team that unfortunately last year in the SPL maybe weren't able to do much. Crimson has been in the conversation as far as top players and for a long time. Sam is a literal Worlds MVP. You go right behind him, Neil is a literal Worlds MVP. And if you go down towards the end, you get Stuart, who maybe doesn't have the MVP status, but has made it an insane run through Worlds just recently, all the way up to the semifinals. And so definitely I think I'm going to say it again because it's just the best phrase for it, star-studded roster that I think a lot of people have high hope for. High expectations for, I think, is maybe the better way to say it. And so heavy usually are the shoulders that the expectations fall on. The team on the other side, Trelly, the Tanuki, came in, got a nice little surprise for everybody at the very upfront of the game, or of the day yesterday. But on top of that, this is maybe one of the better matches for them, because if they win, that's a huge deal.
Oh, yeah.
And if they lose, it's just an expected result, right? Nothing too crazy to really break this mold for them.
Well, expected for just about everyone, but we got to talk in the interview yesterday, and the Tanuki, they're not here to say, oh, we did our best. Mifflin highlighted it so well, and I love the way that Mifflin highlighted the fact that this is a competitor's mindset. They did not say, we are here to do our best. They said, we are here to win. We saw the notes being taken pretty much
instantly.
The second the game was over. They're like, I already know what we'll be VOD reviewing tonight. I know what we're going to make sure we fix up. I love the confidence from this squad, and I think that if they're playing with that level of confidence throughout the entirety of this tournament, even if they did fall here, I'm excited to see what they show, but I think we might be shocked. I think they might come out swinging here in game number 1.
I think yesterday we saw Promise have exceptional support games, right, back to back. Granted, one was Yamoja, one was Maui. Maybe get them on less good gods, and we can see what happens. Grave as well, though, right? I mean, playing something like the Bastet into the Pele looked really solid. And I have to highlight it, XD 001 there. Vulcan 2 games in a row was not, when they, were originally being brought out here, was not the guy that was on the roster, right? Filling in, essentially a sub for this squad. Looked really good yesterday. Admittedly got camped a little bit on the Vulcan, and I wouldn't mind seeing maybe beyond the Vulcan here in mid. But I think that this is a team that when they showed up yesterday, maybe a couple bumps in the start of game 2 up against the Valkyries, but much like you said, Trelly, they've got the fire under them, and they seem to be pushing forward. And I think that, again, actually second closest to the camera there, Grave is going to be a pretty big deal throughout this one, strictly because of all the jungle performance we saw yesterday.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of how this team has adapted to the meta. I saw a lot of talk on Twitter about some of the build paths that some of these players have been going, and how, maybe they don't quite understand the meta, or they're making, their own thing work. And of course, if you're winning, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And in this
win's
case,
a win's a win's a win.
I think the Tanuki in particular have a very unique play style that maybe is more in line with what some of these pros are tweeting about, saying like, hey, why aren't we seeing more tablet builds, for example? I'm just excited to see exactly how they decide to whip it out, because they told us yesterday. They're like, this is going to be, the team you saw today is not what you're going to see tomorrow. We're going to go back, we're going to look at what we did wrong, and we're only going to improve. So the Wargs, they got quite the matchup ahead of them for sure.
And I think being able to see them against a team that, admittedly in my mind, in the Valkyries, that looked like with veteranship, should be able to show a lot of strength. Now they're going up against another team that has a lot of veterans on it, and that's when they found their upside yesterday. We'll see if they can do it again here today. Game number 1, picks and bans. Wargs are going to be the first pick team. There's Stu, finally. I don't know where he's been hanging out. But he makes it there for the important part.
He's got his headphones in. He was just
jamming, getting in the zone.
Getting in the zone.
I'm going to be honest with you, Trelly. I'd be scared if I was going up against a team that had Stu and he was in the zone. That is a very frightening team. I mean, mechanically, we've talked about it in the past. We talked to teammates with him. Quiet guy in comms. Will have his outburst moments, right? But big performance as of late. Mechanically has been a just treat to watch. We'll see what he ends up picking up. A lot of magical carry bans from the Warg so far. Not too surprising given the way the weekend's gone. Olarun, Soul. Whether or not Kronos and Freya join. Freya, it seems like maybe has to join that ban list. Otherwise, it's a good first pick for the Wards. And maybe Kronos can fall on that list for them. Thor on the other side. And there's going to be the Kronos instead from the Yomi Tanuki. The Thor seems like a direct target. Not only has he been doing incredibly well, Trelly, this weekend, but Sam's also got a damn good Thor.
Oh, yeah. he definitely does. And I think that a lot of, despite the fact that I've been saying I don't think the Merc is very strong and I haven't seen a good performance out of it yet, it's been banned consistently throughout this tournament. And we know Sanford Soccer likes to play the Mercury as well. Could be something
have a good Merc
that the Wargs are looking towards. But I think Soul Lane could be something that's contested here. I love seeing Aquarius on something that he's comfortable on. And since the meta has shifted up so much, I'm wondering what that would be. We've seen a lot of these just regular warrior builds.
Yeah.
Guan Yu's been very powerful. I still think that tablet guardians are something that could be looked at for both of these squads. We saw Rundas go with the Yorm, pretty much the damage Yorm over in solo. as well as just, you know, these sustaining warriors that have been over to in that soul lane as well. So could be something contested, but with the Yemoja ban, it looks like healing still on the minds of the Wargs, as well as just incredible CC. That ultimate really can control a team fight.
Well, there's the Mercury. You were talking about it, and I was wondering if it was going to get banned. A question I was going to ask to you as Freya or Maui, it feels like Freya has been taking precedent over that, especially with the other carries that are, the magical carries specifically, stripped away. They didn't even give us a second to think about that possibility that something else might topple Freya here. They lock it in instantly. So Sam gets 2 bans. They let the Freya through. If you're the Tanuki, it feels like Maui has been a pretty big pickup, but not necessary. Where do you go here for if you're thinking about it?
I mean, you could either A, try to get some good duo lane pressure to deal with the Freya, and it looks like that is going to be the route they're looking for. That Maui is going to make sure that you've got some incredible team fight presence, but also he's very safe. He's going to have some great lane clear early. I think there's a lot of things you can do with Maui just by, you know, locking it in the first pick. And it also, there's a lot you can do with it, but it doesn't reveal too much about your draft.
Yeah.
So I think always a safe first pick. But the Vulcan is going to be very highly prioritized here. A pick that definitely does do a lot of burst damage, can bring you some control in the mid lane, but I don't think it needed to be that highly prioritized. In this case, maybe they were worried about it being picked up, or just saying, hey, we want to get XD back on a pick that he feels confident on.
Well, and it's this weird balance, right, where it's like, well, you know, XD had some good games on Vulcan yesterday, but when I see 3 in a row, especially if they, you know, no matter what happens this game, in game 4, if they go back to it, it makes me start to think, okay, is there anything else? Is there anything more to this, right? What goes beyond the Vulcan if it's gone? Maybe something the Wargs will force the Tanuki to explore and find out maybe a little bit later. But for now, Shelly, it's wild that, you know, with Thor doing as well as he has, gets banned away. Mercury, as well as he is, and specifically Sam playing him, banned away. And yet he still gets a god that I don't want to see Sam on if I'm playing against him. It's the Hunbat's locked in alongside a Merlin. There's a lot of burn, a lot of damage on the side of the Wargs right now.
There definitely is, as well as just good setup. I want to see a little bit more beads burn. We've seen Hunbat's struggle late game if no one else is able to pull those beads except for the Fear No Evil, so wouldn't be surprised if Gamma goes to one of his picks that can really help with some initiation. You know, the Cabrakan comes to mind, not something that we've seen too much this tournament, but something that Gamma likes to go towards. There's a few different options here. I think even Ymir would not be terrible. But the Tanuki do have comfort picks throughout, right? I mean, we've seen Rundas play the Yorm, XD on the Vulcan. They've got good magical damage. Gonna need some physical gods here for sure. 3 magical from the top. Curious to see if it's just gonna be a traditional hunter over in that duo lane. Ishtar is still available and has been, you know, something that a lot of these teams have still gone to, despite the fact that magical ADCs are in the forefront of bans. But I'm still curious. It looks like actually the Ymir's gonna be taken away, so Gambit does not get to go to that one at the very least. A lot of these characters don't want to deal with the wall from Ymir.
If Gamma plus anything that can create a wall typically is bad news for the other team. And again, even if it's not necessarily meta, you had mentioned the Cabrakan, maybe a little more far-fetched just as of what we've seen lately, but like, Gamma's real good at it. So at the same time, who cares? I think the Ymir has definitely been on the cusp lately. They picked up the Jormungandr. You had kind of touched on it. As a Bacchus ban comes through, Pele ban from the Wargs. As they get their last ban in here, I kind of want to ask you, I mean, outside of like safety and lane, like Yorm for a while was the cool, we can throw you on this, like similar to when you had like a coach subbing in and you needed him to not die, like Yorm and Xingqian were like the go-to god choices. But what can Yorm bring to this, especially now it has an Izanami beside it, that it can maybe facilitate this frontline better?
It's overwhelming pressure in the lane because Yorm is building full damage in tablet. That's what Rundas does. I've seen it in all my ranked games.
Good point. He did it yesterday.
And I have never not seen him get top damage. Every time I see it, I'm like, surely he just gets camped. And it doesn't happen. I don't know. In this case, you know the Wargs have seen it, right? You know that San Francisco watched that game and said, hey, there's probably going to be a full damage Yorm over in solo. Maybe we deal with that. That could be an idea. But if you let that tablet get stacked up and you let this Yorm rotate in late game, just does so much damage to just about everyone. So
wow.
That is what it's going to bring. And the Cabrakan actually did make it the whole way through. A little bit more prioritized about the Bacchus. That's a pick that we've seen a few times already this weekend, and I've liked it every time at this point. So a lot of CC. They're going to take that away. But the Wargs get plenty of beads burn their last 2 slots.
Is anybody that's not Gamma going to be even looking at Cabrakan for the rest of this tournament, or is it just like, is that like a Gamma special, or is he like just on the edge of meta right now?
I imagine it's comp based. When you see a Vulcan and a Yorm and an Iza, you can really control the slows and just try and find value from that wall. You force them into a Phantom Shell maybe when they didn't want to go for it. So I think it's a pick that Gamma's very comfortable on, and it happens to be very good in this comp. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more of Cobb later on. He's got good pressure.
Okay. I'll be honest, I'm surprised to see him. Granted, I've just been playing a lot of Maui, so I don't really have room to speak. I've been a one-trick pony for like 2 months.
You're definitely right. There are better Guardians, but I think in certain matchups you can be like, oh, this is a Cobb game.
And you know what? Gamma's got a good cab.
Yeah.
God, that's what you were saying, and he's done well with it. Bastet comes back, though, for Grave. Yesterday we saw what a performance that could have. Dealing with some of the front lines, I mean, you had mentioned the walls, someone that can jump over it, someone that can close gap, stick to someone like Freya or Merlin pretty easily with the ultimate, things like that. Do you think the Bastet throws a little bit of a wrench in the plan for the Wargs?
It could. We've seen so many wishy-washy Bastet games as of
one day
recent.
they'll come in and absolutely stomp, the next.
That's what I'm saying. So I have no idea what brand of Bastet we'll be getting here today. Grave's been looking good so far this tournament, and Bastet does bring a lot of damage. But it's all on how are you positioning this character, and also are you landing that Huntress of Bast consistently? If you are, she's got plenty of damage. If you're not, falls off a bit. So I'm going to give it like 50% certainty depending on how hot Grave comes out with it from the gate. He's got that ability to just say, hey, I'm going to get an early first blood and kind of take this game and run with it, though.
See where he can pick up I guess, just the presence of the jungle, right?
Yep.
When it comes to team fights, though, you know, Hunbat's much bigger team fight presence, like late game, you're talking 25 minutes, than what I personally expect out of a Bastet. Is that alleviated? Because, you know, Landfall is like non-committal, really far away, really good ultimate. It feels like maybe it's not like the jungle-to-jungle matchup, but they still have a lot of that presence here for the Tanuki to try and keep up with what the Wargs have in terms of CC.
Yeah, they've got plenty. I'm curious team fight-wise who's going to be the initiator more often than not, because, again, you're not looking towards Sam Versaka to be the first one in fights unless you know a Relic is down. You know, if beads are down, Sam's like, I'm going, I'll look for Vulcan, you guys have fun. But if not, Gamma and Aqua are going to have to be pretty on point with initiating for the squad, saying, okay, you guys get the follow-up, and then we're just going to go in. And also, Stuart on the Freya, that's going to be a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, that's a ticking time bomb for sure. So we'll see what Stu can do on this Freya, what the Wargs have to offer us for our first look here in game number 1.
That's right. It is the Niflheim Wargs and the Yomi Tanuki. We got our first look at the Tanuki yesterday in our first day of the event. This is our first look now at the, assumed number 1 seed of the event, and the caster favorite from all of us to be able to make it through this event, at least in the top 2 out there. It's Chaac and Mifflin joining me on the cast with Doug, giving us our overhead perspective of the battleground. And I'm going to go ahead and open this one up with talking about the Yomi Tanuki's composition. We see a lot of similarities to what we saw yesterday, Myth, the Maui, the Vulcan, the Jormungandr, even the Bastet popping through. It's kind of the odd one here of the Izanami that pops up. Do you feel that this was kind of just a pick to have safe and easy clear, since pretty much all the magical hunters and then Ishtar were also taken away?
Yeah, I mean, Izanami is always going to be a pick that you go towards just for pressure. Those cleave piercing auto attacks, just so powerful at dealing with the minions, allows you to control some of the more farm that's popped up on the left side of the map in Season 10. Just grab the cooldown buff, or the shield buff rather, excuse me. Control those purples, rotate through, grab those back camps as they spawn as well. So it has decent scaling as well. I'm not so concerned about it. I don't have a ton of data on Season 10 Izanami in particular. I would assume she utilizes the crit build relatively well with that stem on her first ability. But otherwise, I think it might be an adjustment that we've seen from the as they struggled, or something they struggled with rather, in the previous set, which was not a whole lot of CC. And we've seen that been rectified all the way across the field. They played a very low CC composition that was all about finding ganks through Grave. Now you've got Rundas who can start the fight with Yorm. Maui can do the exact same thing, and a little bit more silence presence as well.
Early rotation from Grave over here. Gamma gets caught by the hook. Stuart is pumping pulse autos at them, but a pull back on towards Gamma. Luckily, the whoop there from Stuart to save his support's life, but both members of the Niflheim Wargs duo down at low HP off that early rotation.
That's tough. That's such a tough start because you've got the potions to deal with that low HP, but it takes so much time. to heal it all back up. And with Shi'igami jamming pressure on the Iza, you're not going to really have the time to do it, especially if Gamma takes additional poke going forward. This is something you have to be aware of when you play against Grave. Every single game so far this week that Grave has been a part of, it's been first rotation over towards dual lane pre-1 minute. If you're able to back out, not really lose too much off of it, then Grave loses out on a lot of farm. You can already see it. Doesn't come up with anything. Sanford Soccer's already nursing about a half-level lead.
But does manage to at least get the beads away from Stuart, so some potential pressure for the next couple minutes in that dual lane. So we'll be keeping our eyes on maybe another rotation from Grave that way, or just this Maui and Izanami to jam it down in that lane. But it's Sam getting aggressive in mid. XD and Grave both low. The meatball just in case Sam decided to go in with the dive. And there's some early damage out there by Crimson on this Merlin.
Man, Season 10, everybody's trying to work on their muscle memory. If Sanford Soccer pops his Claw Shard, that's a double kill. Guaranteed, every single time. The additional power would have just been enough there. Unfortunate drop, but still, even just forcing back XD and Grave buys so much space and time. We'll see if Aqua, though, baited by that space, gets caught out here. Grave hovering nearby. No Salmon Leap available, not close to the Rage Transformation. Rundas could zone, could just try and control the neutral.
Let's go for the knockup. Aquarius is by the tier 1 tower, so should not be a kill onto him unless Grave and Rundas were willing to dive under. But they do not do so. So instead, Aquarius will get to live for the time being. Has teleport for his relics. He can come back if he were to fall a little too low. In fact, we'll go back to base and utilize it now. Went for the sigil start, so looking maybe towards a little bit later stage of the game with that startup item. Rundas, though, pretty much running the exact same build that we imagined. Tablet likely to be first item in that slot.
Yeah, Tablet of Destiny just so incredibly powerful and allows you to deal so much damage. Rundas on the Jormungandr. Jormungandr in particular, just a great pick to utilize that item. Just poke from a range, don't really need to commit your body. Spit on him as soon as that passive is available, so no surprise if Rundas does decide to itemize this way. Battle continues for the shield buff, finally does go down. Seems to me Yomi Tanuki able to secure it this time around. That's what you'd expect from the Izanami, but there's going to hit an inflection point in the duo very shortly. I think it's legitimately first item down, and Stu's going to become a lane bully. This Freya just has so much damage output.
And when I think of, big picks for Stu, I'm thinking back towards tail end of Season 8 when he was playing on the Solar Scarabs. Freya, Olaron, probably the top two that really come to mind, especially when those two gods were meta. Those were ones that Stuart was slamming even at the World Championships when the Scarabs had made it there at that point. Those were definitely some of the more powerful picks, so I've got high expectations for Stuart on this pick going forward. Same with Gamma on this Cabrakan. That's one of his kind of top 3 go-to gods in his support arsenal at the moment. And the fact that he went over some of the other bigger picks around at this point and went with this Cabrakan shows me they got a lot of confidence in the dual lane for the Wargs.
I mean, talk about expectations. I'm looking at Sam for Soccer. This is a Sam for Soccer meta. He wants to be that solo agent, carry role, loves playing the standard assassins. Batz has been his bread and butter for as long as I've been watching his pro career as well. So I think very high expectations around this player, and already has primed himself for a decent mid-game. A full level lead over Grave, who's just recently ticked to 5. Sam for Soccer hovering around 6. You don't generally want to get involved before first item on Batz. Just get that CDR available as quickly as possible. So often people call Batz the god of, hey, if my ult's up, I can play the game. If it isn't, I won't. Get some CDR, your ult's up a little bit more often. So keep your eyes on him. Has worked his way back to base. Finally finishes up that Jotuns. It's time to get involved.
I wonder if we'll see early rotations from Sam over towards the solo lane. I mean, that was something that was mentioned by Charlie over on the desk, was that every time that we've seen Rundas go for this Jormungandr, going damage item first, there's no defense on the Yorm. He's not building to be tanky or just to hit a lot harder. I wonder if we'll see Sam maybe try and exploit that a little bit early, but it seems for now it's eyes on the dual lane. Stuart, not even with his first item online yet, still keeping Shi'igami zoned out. But I believe that's because Sam may have walked over that ward that's just under the Gold Fury pit on his rotation over.
Yeah, maybe. Shi'igami showing a whole lot of respect here. Does also need to just respect the lane opponent, right? Freya, even without that first item, has got pretty decent boxing potential. Hasn't quite finished up that Aussie for Shi'igami. And it's body language as well. Stuart posturing towards the front of that wave, playing in melees, holding on to his abilities. That really telegraphs that somebody's nearby. Even if Sam for Soccer doesn't step on that ward, maybe you're assuming Gamma's hovering in the jungle, or it could be Sam somewhere else. So good heads-up play from Shi'igami. Good game sense, realizing that now's not the time to fight. Go ahead and play it a little bit more passive.
supports going for 2 different startups themselves. Gauntlet of Thieves for Promise, just to give himself some of that extra aura sustain for his team as it moves on. Opposite side, Gamma going for the Prophetic Cloak. We've seen quite a few of them picked up between the solo lane, usually grabbing those, usually 3rd item. Haven't seen as many supports picking up, and even fewer supports and even solos who have been finishing that item out. Haven't been able to get the full evolved passive through, but man, it's just such a tanky item to get for anybody who picks it up.
He's going to grab 4 stacks, and he's going to look like the tankiest guy on the planet. I mean, it's just such a statted item, not even just for the protections, but getting a little bit of cooldown reduction as well so early in your build is just incredibly valuable. I hopped on Twitter after the games yesterday, and every support that is currently in the SPL just complaining that we haven't seen enough Prophetic.
Gamma picked up by the cat. This should be a kill on the Cabrakan. He is slowed down. Stun is good, and the landfall will take him down. No pullback necessary. It's just the damage for Promise and the Yomi Tanuki to strike first blood.
That is an ideal first blood recipient for the Niflheim Wargs, though. Having Promise be the recipient means that you're not really too concerned about it. Gauntlet of Thieves going to get some additional stacks, and having a Maui with a lead probably doesn't feel exactly great, but I mean, it's better than maybe Grave grabbing it and catching up to Sam for Soccer, or Shipigami grabbing it and expediting his own laning process. So if it's got to be somebody, you're happy it's Promise.
Sam goes in aggressive with Stu up against Shipigami. Teleport out by Shipigami will get him back to safety, and Promise there just to make sure that there is no further dive from Sam or Stu towards that tower. So for now, Shipigami will be just fine. No beads needed. Just his mobility was enough to get him out of danger there.
Yeah, not much that you can really force out on your own on that left-hand side. I'm keeping my eyes on rotations, though. Grave has pretty decent gank targets. Dual lane, of course, you want to shut down the Freya, and Bastet uniquely suited to do so. Apply those claws, and Valkyrie's Discretion really can't help you out in situations like that. But otherwise, maybe even rotations over towards Aqua.
Grave. Gonna put a little bit of pressure up against Stu, but it's a rotation in from Gamma. Finds the wall against 2.
Good ult.
Fear no evil as well. And a teleport in by Sam. He found the shot on Grave. And Stuart will get the last hit with the auto to do so. Makes it 1-for-1. Now for the Niflheim Wargs over a small skirmish by the shield buff. This buff really feels like this has just been the eye of interest for so many teams this weekend so far.
It just gives you so much confidence to initiate fights. If you lose your shield, you're not complaining about it at all. It just gives you a little bit of a buffer to start off your engagement. I'm surprised that they give it over to Gamma, though. Maybe thinking he needs to get point blank to apply his damage, to apply his CC. Give him some of that, but Stu on the Freya being your late game win condition, getting a little bit more survivability on her so you don't have to worry about that laning phase nearly as much. Equally valuable. Instead, the Niflheim Wargs, I think, want to get aggressive from here on out. Haven't quite been able to establish their foothold on the map just yet. For the most part, we've seen skirmishes around that duo lane, around that respawn of the shield buff, of course, but we haven't seen mid laners get involved too often. XD and EruptCrimson essentially free ride so far throughout the early game. Have been allowed to farm up, but only one benefiting from it. It's actually Crimson who's controlled the majority of the neutral camps, also soloing out green buffs and backs when he's given the opportunity. Has net him a 2-level lead. Goodness, that is significant so early.
Startup of the Gold Fury for the Yomi Tanuki. Gamma's the only one who is nearby that can sniff this one out, but it's down to a 3rd HP. Gamma's not even going to walk up to it. This is just a free Gold Fury for the Yomi Tanuki, and a good way to try and bounce back in this game and take a small lead over Niflheim Wargs. About 300 gold to the tune, but still 2k XP up for the Order side team. As mentioned, most of that coming for the way of Crimson. Damage from Sam, and a Fear No Evil is all that's needed to take down the Bastet. No beads available to the jungler. It's an easy pick for Sam.
And a little bit more damage to both XD and Promise in that tower. Niflheim Wargs had to do something to cut their losses there, with Gold Creek going over to the Chaos side. A gank on the Grave will go a good distance, especially considering how slow this build Grave is going for. Gotta assume it's Bloodforge in this next slot. It's a very slow build from this Bastet. Pushing back the penetration means that your front line's gonna get more value from Niflheim Wargs, and slowing it down even further only gets you more value. Speaking of build differences, though, take a peek at the mid lane. Crimson going in towards the tablet, as opposed to the standard Book of Thought that we've seen from XD and just about every other mid laner so far this event. Should give him a little bit more early game oomph, and stacking up means your late game is going to feel pretty good as well. Doesn't even forego the Thought. That's a very greedy start to the game. I mean, given the pace of the mid lane so far, only first skirmish at about that 10-minute mark, double stack doesn't feel so bad.
We'll see. how long it takes Crimson to maybe get some of those stacks online for the tablet, because we've seen in some situations where you see mid has gone for early tablet, you avoid them like the plague. You say, all right, well, I'm not going to give you your free stacks, your free true damage, but it seems like it's so difficult when you have a god like Merlin. Going to avoid the stun by Promise by backstepping instead. Gamma goes in, locks Promise in place. Promise has nowhere to go. Landfall available if needed, but doesn't seem that he'll need it. Will use it anyways, question mark, but he'll be out, though it did cost both the ultimates of the Maui and the Vulcan.
Yeah, I think Promise was trying to reposition into the tower and just pull back anybody that was barrel stuffing him. So Gamma, if he's pulled into tower there, likely does lose his life. Gamma playing wary of it. Back steps, and Promise, it just doesn't look good when you whiff that ultimate, unfortunately for him. But I think a good attempt nonetheless. Wants to find some sort of action early on. You got to know, though, every time the Niflheim Wargs take action in the mid lane, that mid 3v3, Gamma's just getting stronger every single time. That prophetic cloak stacks up when you hit enemy gods, and Gamma hasn't struggled to do so just yet.
Stuart backsteps the Dark Portal. Craven Promise are on the way. Beads used by Shippigami to get out of the whoops. Those are down for another 160 seconds. Could be a quick rotation from Gamma, maybe even Crimson, or even Sam, if you can get that Hun Batz over there. Get that Fear No Evil online still, that 30% CDR available to Sam at the moment. Because that's a much, much shorter cooldown than what you may be more accustomed to. But Sam's not going to go for the rotation over for now. Maybe a call out from Stu saying that Shinigami is heading back to base himself.
Yeah, Hunbots is a different beast here in Season X as well. I think this god has ridiculous burst potential with hi-rez, with the flat pen that assassins just get by being assassins. Really has just changed up Hunbots' game. He's no longer just purely a facilitator. He can act on his own. We saw it in that Tier 1 tower dive up against Grave. All that damage comes from Sam for Soccer on his own. I'm thinking I got to keep my eyes on him going forward. Haven't been too active in the side lanes just yet. Shinigami playing very wary. Twice now, just backs up every single time Sam for Soccer has made this rotation. This time, though, Sam for Soccer knows for a fact he hasn't stepped on a ward, at least not nearby, has the sentry path to work his way forward, but regardless, safe play from the Tanuki.
Stu is going to get a little bit of poke on Promise. He's able to
Good
swing
Lord.
away, but now with 2 items up on the Freya, those Bastions don't stand much of a chance up against the damage that Stuart can output on them. Just a few more gumballs will take those ones down. Needs 1 more to drop it, and we'll be able to still full clear the wave nearly entirely as well. Sam's still waiting by, but Rundas has made a rotation over. I don't think Stu has recognized this and has gone in aggressive. Sam being trailed by the Yorm, but Rundas has actually pulled away from the team fight entirely. Not sure if that was a call out, that maybe Gamma was on the way to stop this.
Yeah, just don't want to overstay with the Gold Fury up. Don't want to lose your life or take too much damage. Just like this, it's a massive team fight tool lost early.
This goes into the World Serpent. Gamma gonna get pulled back by Promise, but Stu is juking out every World Serpent shot. The Bunchers of Batz pulls Gamma back in, but not the ideal target. Instead, it's a turnaround. Now all 5
Watch
here.
Aqua.
Landfall pulls back 1, but Aqua is bullying the other 4. Promise only barely able to swing away, but Sam will not let him go. A Fear No Evil in, and Sam takes up the first kill.
A 5-on-5 around the Gold Fury as it respawns, but it's only the Wargs with 5 now. Yomi Tanuki is still relatively healthy and have the ultimate from Shinigami, but it's going to be so difficult to work your way into this fight. You have no frontline, essentially. Rundas is not a tank.
Sneaking around the back of the fight, but not going to go in. Primal Fury is just being kited around by Gamma for the rest of the team to smack away. No commit from the Yomi Tanuki means Primal Fury for the Niflheim Wargs. That's going to set them up for a very small lead to start things out, about a 1.3k gold lead. The experience is still where a lot of that relevancy matters. Nearly 4,000 up for the Wargs.
Yeah, where is the level lead? Still 2 in mid, 1 in ADC, and 1 in the jungle, and a bit of parity over in that soul lane. The Niflheim Wargs, having removed the Gold Free from the map, can start playing around that soul lane too. Pyromancer, so valuable in Season 10. Does everything you're used to in Season 9, but now also drops that Runic Bomb, which is essentially a objective secure, or siege secure, just makes everything so much easier. The standard answer to Gold Free going down is going for the opposite. Yomi Tanuki do exactly that with Gamma nearby.
Vulcan ultimate will be enough to secure. Gamma not able to find the stun. One looping around back behind, but maybe can try and lock Promise in place for Crimson to get a little bit of extra poke through. Get some of the stacks up on that tablet. Nearing 20 so far for the mid lane. Remember, max 50 stacks, and that gives you at least 7% of your mana as true damage to your opposition when that's fully stacked up. And considering we've got 2 within the book tree to provide a lot of mana, Crimson's going to be getting a lot of value from that item late game.
Could, and even could decide to itemize towards things like Breastplate of Valor, double dips, reminiscent of the builds that we see from Paul. Get a little bit of CDR, some defense, some survivability to deal with the dive of Yomi Tanuki. Crimson, though, wants to stack damage and damage alone, I'm sure. Tends to be his playstyle, so unlikely that he looks towards utility going forward. We are likely going to hit a bit of a stalemate for the next couple of minutes. Pyromancer and Gold Fury off the map. Barring some very nice picks, clean picks from either side, it's pretty unlikely we see Fire Giant before that 20-minute mark. Neither team exactly the best at dealing with that objective. Maybe slight advantage over to Yomi Tanuki. Having a damage-dealing Soul Laner as well as a Vulcan means you've got the burn and secure. And a Runic Bomb at that. I think if anything, Niflheim Wargs probably need to play concerned on that right-hand side. Instead, it's a massive stack up on the left. Grave connects with Gamma once more.
Once again, but Fear No Evil is there by Sam to keep promise at bay. Vulcan ult won't hit anybody, but unfortunately the landfall gets caught by the wall. Grave still goes in. Sam is low, and Sam is gone. Grave finally picks up a kill for himself this game, but it's only going to be one so far, and the Runic Bomb dropped to get no value there. Promise can't get to the sky in time, barely makes it up, but Aquarius is there, won't find the shot. Stuart's got to get him with the Valkyrie's discretion, but he just cannot, and now Rundas joins into the fight. World Serpent won't find anybody on the first, but he's still got two more to keep Stuart and Crimson locked down. It's an unofficial double for Grave, 2 for the Yomi Tanuki.
Not much to fight over on this side of the map. Maybe push into that tower. 4 versus 2 now with Aqua back in base. Call it 1. Gamma too weak to stick around. A tier 1 on the left, maybe not the most valuable, but getting a little bit more gold and keeping EruptCrimson in place could be the value they're looking for.
Gonna get hit by Rundas. They're gonna lose the tier 1 tower on the left side. Fury's still down for about another minute though before that one comes back up for the Tanuki to get, so it will just be their 2 picks and the tier 1 tower. And that evens out the game entirely. Barely any gold and XP separating them now. Really the only substantial lead is still in mid for the Niflheim Wargs. 2 levels up still for EruptCrimson over XDO 001. But now we've finally seen that jungle close its gap up. We actually see a little bit of a lead in the duo lane now.
And I'm loving how Yomi Tanuki are approaching these fights. It's very disjointed. They're trying to walk in, maybe grab somebody with Graves' ultimate, grab somebody with Promise's ultimate, then it's an immediate disengage. The Niflheim Wargs, I think, playing with a bit more confidence than they should be, considering the state of the game and exactly where the gold leads lie. Start to chase out some of these engagements. Yomi Tanuki, as they back up, start to fold in. Rundas, for the most part, has been coming into the fight after it has started up, almost like an assassin. It goes in with that stealth. It makes it so difficult for the Wargs to retreat from these situations. And if you are on the retreat as the Wargs, good luck outrunning all of these picks. Promise giving over essentially a heavenly sprint with his second ability and the bracer. Rundas with the World Serpent has great chase potential as well. If the Wargs get dropped low, I don't think they walk out of there. I think your best bet, likely, turn and burn.
It seems that maybe Rundas has adjusted his build for the remainder of the team, not going in towards that full damage Yorm that we had seen prior. Instead, going to 2 defense items immediately after. We'll see how he can impact this next team fight as the breakout around the Oni Fury starts out. Hook off the mark by Promise this time around. The turret will pull the Oni Fury back towards the Yomi Tanuki, but Aqua and Rundas having a little square off on the right side of the pit over by the mid Harpies. Neither team willing to commit to the pull so far. The Niflheim Wargs a little bit more spread out. I say that, but Grave is all the way to the far left in the lane for the Yomi Tanuki, just split pushing the wave.
Look at vision around the Gold Fury, though. So much controlled by Yomi Tanuki. Not only the Gold Fury pit itself, but also the majority of the pass in towards it. The Niflheim Wargs, they're going to really struggle to just even close gap. They have to assume they're on vision the entire time. You haven't got any wards in pocket, or any sentry wards, rather, on the side of the Wargs either. So it's going to be playing at an information disadvantage for the entirety of this dance.
Crimson's walking really far up with Gamma and Stu. Promise on death's door, but able to swing away. Now Stuart is the one in danger, goes up into the sky just for some immunity to get away, but Grave walks a little bit further forward. The Vulcan ult immune out by Stu, but look into the backline, and Sam and Aqua are just terrorizing the backline. It's a double kill for the Soul Laner, nearly a triple, but Crimson gets the last hit. And the Niflheim Wargs find 3 picks in an instant and can walk back to the Oni Fury.
I cannot believe it went down like that, J-Mac. Yomi Tanuki knew everything that was happening. The entirety of the Niflheim Wargs playing on a ward, and Stu just simply W keys in, drops Promise to 20%, and then Valkyrie's discretion's his way out of there, and the Tanuki had no response. With Aqua creating space in the backline, zoning out Shipigami, there just was not enough damage on landing to actually punish Stu's insanely aggressive positioning. Not only turning around a fight that probably shouldn't have gone their way, but grabbing the objective and likely a Pyromancer as well.
Crimson playing very greedy in his pathing. Takes a couple shots from Shipigami and one from Rundas on the way out. Puts him down to a quarter, and that may have just given up an opportunity to take the Pyromancer for the Wargs, but
they
with
wouldn't.
Aqua nearby,
They wouldn't. They
be
would.
a stop of the Tanuki at there. Instead, the Tanuki go to the Fire Giant. Rundas zoning Aquarius. He's the only one who can get in there. No Runic Bomb for confirm, but they do have a Vulcan ultimate. Aquarius gonna do his best to try and zone out. Hundreds of Bast used. Fire Giant only at a quarter, though. It's not going down as fast as they had hoped. Sam for Soccer's here. Fear no evil. The Wargs
He got it.
steal the Fire Giant away. Sam picks up a double all the while. And his Rundas on the run, but XD gets caught out by Stuart and is being batted away by the Freya. 3 picks and a Fire Giant off the back of Sam for Soccer.
Just a miserable situation for Yomi Tanuki, because you got to think they're playing that perfectly. You spot Stu on left. You know Crimson's gone back to base. Season 10, larger map, pull fire every single time. Secure just off the mark, and Sam for Soccer, given a natural disaster level ultimate there, completely disrupts Yomi Tanuki. Now Fire Giant on 4, and Aqua on the mend in 5. They walk into the Phoenix just to poke some damage and then back themselves up. This is all gravy for the Niflheim Wargs. Everything that has happened within the last 45 seconds, not accounted for, not in the plan. You just happen to get into a really good situation thanks to Aqua's phenomenal play around that fire, slowing down Yomi Tanuki just long enough for Sam for Soccer to get in there. And talk about a swing. This is the difference we talk about between some of these top-seeded teams and the bottom seed. These small mistakes, these small, just micro issues can really punish you. We went from dead even to 6K down in 30 seconds.
And that's always the struggle that when we talk to the SCC teams and they're going up against the SPL, they say, you know what, against other SCC teams, we make one little mistake.
Not a big
Not
deal.
a big deal. You know, it happens. Even if we're, you know, only a couple thousand gold up, we can fight back, no problem. When you get to the SPL, all it takes is one mistake for things like this to happen. Niflheim Wargs made a perfect punishment off of that one small mistake, that one risky Hail Mary that the Yomi Tanuki went for on that Fire Giant. They took down Aquarius. That was part number 1, was making sure that the Chulainn doesn't steal that one away. But unfortunately, they took so long on the burn and killing of him that it gave Sam time to rotate in.
Yeah, I wonder if the call even is to burn Aquarius, right? It's not as if he's got massive steal potential. I know we've seen wild steals so far this week, the 120 damage Guan Yu Fire Giant steal during the Tanuki set previously. I think probably indicative of difficulty securing, but you've got a Vulcan, you got a Bastet, Jormungandr 1 also outconfirms just about anything Aqua can do as well. Had they ignored him, I think they grab the objective and disengage.
Sam used his Runic Bomb to walk into the Phoenix and take about half of its HP with a couple extra autos to boot. But it's a grouping on the left and then a split with the mid as well for the Niflheim Wargs, keeping the Yomi Tanuki guessing as to where they need to keep their pressure and keep their defense up. Sam and Aqua against Rundas engraved in the mid lane. The other 3 to the left side of the map. Promise half HP already. Gamma goes in, but Gamma has to back out once he starts getting targeted by that bird.
Yeah, Gamma's so tanky though. Is allowed to just keep weaving in and out of that Phoenix range. I don't love the usage of Runic Bomb from the Niflheim Wargs so far. You really want to utilize it almost as a pseudo Emperor's armor. When you use it on structures, it takes away some of that attack speed. So when you're going in for a dedicated siege, so powerful. Instead, the Wargs poke out the mid Phoenix, drop it down to half, but immediately disengage.
Stu lose out on the beads during that fight. That's going to cost him the beads for Graves' ultimate, so a nice little trade out there, but that seems to be enough of a call for the Wargs to back away. Only 30 seconds left on their Fire Giant, and then the Fire Giant will respawn itself instantly. So with the last few seconds, the Wargs will go towards the Primal Fury and try and take as much off the map as they can from the Yomi Tanuki. Now we've had our first kind of pseudo defense. I can't really call that much of a siege defense so far because it wasn't really a committed one by the Niflheim Wargs. How does it feel for the Yomi Tanuki as we're now starting to push towards depths of 8,000 gold down and potentially more if this Fire Giant goes back their way?
You ask me how an 8K deficit feels? Not ideal.
Not great.
Let me tell you, J-Mac. Me personally, I prefer leads. No, I mean,
Like
there
everyone
still
does.
are certainly ways for Yomi Tanuki to stick around in these fights. I think it comes down to initiation. If Grave can grab priority targets with that ultimate, it just really simplifies your game. But so far, we've only been grabbing Gamma, and Gamma's a complete tank. And now Gamma's also got Magi, so it's harder to grab him. There really isn't a whole lot of threat on beads from the Niflheim Wargs. Keep your eyes on their relics. For the most part, Crimson has always had his available. Stu, the only one lacking right now, but still has that Valkyrie's Discretion as a line of safety. And considering his positioning in previous fights, currently, and going forward, doesn't seem like Stu feels like he's under much threat either. Keep your eyes on Grave, keep your eyes on Rundas. I think those two really important for Yomi Tanuki, whereas XD and Shi'igami largely relegated to playing in their own backline.
Just going to try and walk forward. We get stunned by Gamma instantly. The burst damage from this Merlin puts Rundas low, and Stu walks up and nearly takes out the Yorm. Teleport still down for 15 seconds on Rundas. That is a window of opportunity now for the Wargs to start with the Fire Giant. A promise is still here, as well as the rest of the Yomi Tanuki. Gamma's tanking this one up. Fire Giant's not falling very fast. It feels like the Wargs are just trying to bait the Tanuki into the pit instead.
Yeah, they got to bait with damage, though. If the Fire Giant's HP doesn't move, neither will the Tanuki. Rundas TP's in regardless. Rejoins the fight with the rest of his team. And it's Yomi Tanuki who have moved the goalpost now. No longer is the Skirmisher on fire. Instead, it's the Pyromancer. You're willing to coin toss this a little bit more. Not quite as valuable. But even then, Tanuki need to create some space.
Damage from EruptCrimson. Now, you know,
Ooh,
all
got
high
Stu.
Stu gets pulled back in. The beads are still down, but he has the ultimate to pull himself back out. Grave nearly gone, caught out by the wall of Gamma and dropped by EruptCrimson on the Merlin. Aquarius goes to the back line, finds the frontliner and the carry of XD, who is on the run. The shell has been popped, and so is the landfall, just to try and block off a path, but there's so much damage coming from the Niflheim Wargs. So many paths back in, but Promise able to make it out. Shi'igami whooped up by Stuart and dead the moment he hits the ground. 2 more picks for the Niflheim Wargs.
Tanuki, just a bit of an overstay there. He already grabbed the Pyromancer. Grave initiates the rest of his team on disengage. Weren't quite able to follow up, and once more Aqua gets into the back line of the Tanuki and prevents any sort of follow-up afterward. I like the attempt from Promise to close off that path, buy some time for the rest of his team. Shi'igami as well tries to get out the rest of his boys by standing his ground, but simply falls prey to the CC of the Niflheim Wargs, and once more, Fire Giant finds their way to the veterans. Now 5 strong, plenty of gold to collect on the map.
Wargs will go ahead and take down the last tier 2 tower on the right side of the map. And Doug, if we can get a look onto Crimson real quick, I'm just curious as to what his mana pool is right now, because he does have that
You're gonna do
tablet
the
fully
math?
stacked.
No way you're going to do this math.
Roughly 200 damage. 7% of 1,000 is 70. He's got nearly 3K. He's sitting at about 200 extra damage per tablet.
I'll take
stack.
your word for it, man. I'm
Only
not
reason I
doing
know-
any math right now.
Yeah, he's swinging, and that's every 2 seconds he gets to do that to somebody. That's crazy damage output that this Merlin has, and it's now put him at the top of the damage charts.
And Merlin's so good at proccing it. I mean, you could just catch someone with a stray singular tick of an Ice Storm or the first ability. Any of his stances, really. This guy just throws out massive color explosions that dominate team fights or even sieges. Merlin's so good in situations like that. Going to be very difficult for Yomi Tanuki to prevent this next attempt on these Phoenixes. I'm curious to see how the Niflheim Wargs approach it. Previously a 3-2 split with the Hun bots playing towards the center of the map. But I think Sanford Soccer is so integral to the team fight of the Niflheim Wargs. You almost want him playing with the core of the team. Fear no evil. Just so good at shutting down Yomi Tanuki's front line, or even now their back line. Both Shi'igami and Grave. 30 seconds left until those beads are up.
Push up to the left side. Sam will split himself away from the team and start getting some of those mid waves up towards the Phoenix. The Niflheim Wargs will play very cautiously on the left side, waiting for their minion wave to arrive. And Sam, buying some time in the mid, will likely divert the attention of at least one member of the Yomi Tanuki. The Wargs are playing so far back on the left. Almost feel like I'm watching a bots match where they walk back and then walk in with the minion wave. But now with those minions here, quick clear out by the Yomi Tanuki means it'll be yet another wave before they can initiate. Aquarius did get pulled back by Promise, but immediately able to break away from there. No further push from the Wargs just yet.
Yeah, this is the worst magical hunter in the game at actually sieging Phoenix. Freya struggles with that structure damage of the Wargs playing very, very aware of it as of now. With an enhanced minion wave, maybe you got a better shot. Yomi Tanuki won't be able to one-shot this wave.
Gamma blinks to the back line. XD is in danger. The landfall doesn't find anybody. The Vulcan is
What
one
hit him?
shot away, and it's Aquarius who takes him down. The World Serpent runs through the back line, but Rundas has got to get away. And instead is a left side Phoenix and a single pick for the Wargs. With another minion wave on the way, the Wargs can move towards mid for the next bird.
I have no idea what dealt the damage to XD there. 80% of his HP was just gone immediately. He beats Aegis so fast, it just wasn't fast enough.
Rundas still goes into the middle of 3. Big
Good
stun
stun.
by Promise, puts 2 at critical HP, but in the sky is Stu, and in the grave is the Bastet. Rundas joins him as well. 3 down for the Yomi Tanuki and make it 4 with Promise. It's a double kill for Stu, and the Niflheim Wargs can walk to the Titan and take game number 1.
The Wargs given a landfall of just massive good fortune around the Fire Giant, completely snowballed up until this point. Yomi Tanuki were not allowed to find their footing after one flubbed objective play towards the mid game. The Wargs, it's a veteran squad. If you want to beat them, you got to play perfect.
And this is a team coming into this event, Miff, when we all sat down at the table and we said, all right, what's our predictions? Who do we think is going to be one of the teams making it through? Every single one of the casters predicted the Niflheim Wargs. It's for plays like this and for games like this. Just such a dominant force on the map in this first game.
It is, but when I had given that prediction, I was thinking to myself, well, Sanford Soccer is just going to go carry mode, right? Season 10. That's not exactly that performance. It wasn't the emphatic performance that I was expecting from the Wargs here. I thought it was going to be a quick, just let's run it through, keep it concise. This time, though, Yomi Tanuki showed a good deal of fight back.
Niflheim Wargs really felt like they played a lot through their carries more than anything there. Sam kind of got to play facilitator a bit more this game on the Hun Bats, but you blame for how many picks were, or I should say bans were thrown his way towards that
True.
one. Didn't have the easiest time going through, but Niflheim Wargs able to take game number 1. We'll see if they can keep up the pace in game number 2 right after this break.
Take 10 steps back till you get to where you're going. Just research where you're going. A t-shirt where it's snowing. A preacher not quite knowing what he's saying. What he's saying. I don't wanna be around when you lose control. I don't wanna be around when you lose control. I don't wanna be around when you lose control. When you lose control, it's so hard to hold. All this weight up on my shoulders. I hate to say I told you so. 10 steps back. Close your eyes and listen. Look from somewhere different. I know that I've been slipping. I fold my tie and ribbon out my scars. That's how it starts. Ooh, I don't wanna be around when you lose control. I don't wanna be around when you lose control. I don't wanna be around when you lose control. When you lose control, it's so hard to hold. All this weight up on my shoulders. I hate to say I told you so. Yeah. Told you so. Yeah. I don't wanna be around when you lose control. I don't wanna be around when you lose control. I don't wanna be around when you lose control. When you lose control, it's so hard to hold. All this weight up on my shoulders. I hate to say I told you so. Hate to say I told you so. Hate to say I told you so.
Well, it's not all smooth sailing, but it's still a 1-0 victory here for the Wargs after a bumpy start, let's call it. Trelly, they clean things up as the game goes on. Score, I just said his name, but it's Trelly over there. The Wargs, again, a team that we expected to come out on top.
Yeah.
I will admit, I'm personally surprised not length, but the bumps that were on their way to this victory, right? At the very beginning, the Tanuki actually looked incredible. I think there were just some really key moments, maybe some of that veteranship coming through for the Wargs that really helped turn it back and keep them in favor, get them this win. But you flip a coin about halfway through there, and it's anyone's game.
Yeah, that Fire Giant play in particular where Sam for Soccer shows up. Actually, I guess Aquarius was there, stalled long enough so that Sam for Soccer could show up, steals the FG, wins the fight handedly. At that moment, that's when the game was really cemented for the Wargs, and I think even before that, they had the lead, of course.
Yeah.
It was I'm not going to call it a Hail Mary, but it was definitely a risky call for the Tanuki to try and go for it, but it was a weighted coin in their favor for sure. I mean, it was a solid 5v2 at that Fire Giant, and Sam still makes the clutch plays, as you would expect from a World Champ MVP, right? I mean, Sam for Soccer goes on point this game. I think Aqua had a fantastic game, just diving consistently on this Chulainn. Crimson you could count on for the damage in the backline as Merlin was pumping big numbers, and of course, Stuart, I think, was stepping up a little bit too far at times, but the team had his back. He was able to get peeled out, and after this is when I was like, okay, yeah, that's probably over.
And it's actually interesting because back-to-back, I think you get the fight that gets the Wargs back in a position of control, right? That one Gold Fury fight, Stu walks forward, Chunk's promise down to 20%, almost loses his own life, but is able to get out of there. And like you said, it's because he was playing very aggressively, but it paid off because most of the time he didn't die when he was playing that far up. You get yourselves ahead, you get an Oni Fury, you feel confident then Sam gets to go in and steal things. And when you're already ahead and you strip away something that big of a play as well, you better win the game after that. And so the Wargs look incredible there. 4-1 and 8 picked up for Sam. 5-1 and 4. I mean, really good slash lines all around. Have to give the shout out to Crimson, undying on the Merlin and affecting 14 total of the kills. It just feels like everybody, when they started getting things back on track, right? Maybe you can call it a warm-up for the first 10 minutes, whatever you want to talk about. once they got things on the rails, it felt like the Tanuki had a hard time answering back.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the Bastet pick. I said it as it was picked that it could have some shakiness as it goes on, but I saw a lot of Grave doing decent damage and then trying to finish kills with the pounce, and that's all well and good if you can get the kill and get out, but more often than not, it was immediately found by a wall from Gamma or some follow-up, so I'm thinking maybe change up the jungle pick there, and that could have been a different game, but we'll see what the Tanuki have because they got to bounce back.
Well, we had to wait until set number 4 yesterday before we got a 3-game set. We'll see if the Tanuki are going to find themselves a draft that can do it here. So we get into picks and bans for game number 2. Outside of, the Bastet maybe stands out the most, and now with the Freya being banned, maybe that is an answer to the question as well. What kind of things do you want to see the Tanuki change coming into this draft?
I mean, overall, I think that Bastet can be an early jungler, but I still want even more aggression out of the jungle early on. And then more particular, I don't want to see Stuart on Freya. So I'm glad that this has already been remedied in the sense of Tanuki your first pick, and the Wargs are the ones who are going to be banning out the Freya. So that's going to be a good call. As good as Sam is on Hunbats, I think that he's that good on many other characters, so I wouldn't hate just letting the Hunbats through. I don't think that's the end of the world if the Tanuki can deal with that CC, but for me mostly, I just want to see Grave on a hard carry jungler, and the Bastet didn't do it for me.
So maybe something a little stronger for them. Last time around, it's a little more focus on Sam specifically. The Mercury had been banned out by the Tanuki. And Bacchus jumps up in priority, right? He had been banned in their second wave. And they banned him up front alongside the Thor and the Oler on the other side. Very expected first pick bans. Freya, Yamoja, and the Maui. And so the Tanuki, I mean, we've been talking about it. We expected magical carries to be the precedent coming into this, but Soul finally not only getting through, but getting first picked.
And I think that that's going to bring some extra pressure over towards the duo lane. More often than not, that's where the Soul has been going. These magical ADCs, with the addition of the Bastions, like Soul can just stay with those full heat auto attacks. No one can really outbox her before level 5 if she's hitting her abilities correctly and making sure to keep that heat going. So it can be a detriment if you try and box up against this character. Tanuki wanted to play through that duo lane pressure, trying to give that over to Shippigami. I think a smart call. What do the Wargs answer back with, though? With the Maui and the box is taken away. It looks like they are going to go over towards the Ymir. Still going with that early Guardian, but in this case, you already took 3 bans, I guess, the Emoji as well. So grab that Ymir and get Crimson back on the Merlin. I've got no problems with that. I mean, Crimson, he played perfect positioning, as you said, did not die, and plenty of damage numbers as well.
Yeah, if you go 3-0-11, I think legally we aren't allowed to complain about the pick. Maybe there's something else in there. Maybe there's a clause at the very end, but I'd have to double check. The Ymir is the one that excites me the most. One that, admittedly, Trelly, last year we got used to 2 kinds of Ymir games.
Right.
There's the I've now fed my brains out and I'm 0-8, and not necessarily the reason my team lost, but sure as hell did not help. And then there's the alternative, which is something that we've maybe come to expect a little bit more, at least me specifically out of Gamma, which is the I'm hitting all my walls, they look perfect, I'm changing up these team fights in favor of my team, finding good freezes. Even if I end up dying, I'm getting good damage out there. A lot of things that the Ymir can bring. He's also been banned quite a bit the last couple of days, so finally getting to see it picked up feels like it could be a big win. For now, we'll stay in that realm of possibility. There's a hover here for the Tanuki on a Ra, which Benny Q's not in that booth, so I'd be honestly impressed if it gets locked in, considering right now I feel like there's only maybe a couple
awesome.
players that I'm expecting that from.
I love the Pele here. I was going to say the only way I'm fully on board with this Raw lock is if it was going to be a Najan that slot, but because it's the Pele, I thought the Raw would lose a little bit of value there. Doesn't really appreciate going up against the Ymir wall, but they're laughing. They got smiles on their face. The Tanuki are confident with this one. They've got plenty of magical damage. Again, we already saw a fantastic performance from Grave on the Pele earlier on. So far, they've got decent objective burst. They've got plenty of damage. They've got the early pressure with the Pele. I need to see a little bit more CC and setup for this Raw, because more often than not, you're not hitting those free rolls when the Wargs know it's coming, right? They usually can react to that, so I'm going to need a little bit more CC.
Now, I said this yesterday. I was casting with Mifflin when it happened. Cernunnos' lock-in line is very morbid. The inevitable death is all in nature's plan.
Is that what he says when you lock him in?
That's what he said, at least in the 2 games that I've seen him yesterday and today. It's what he's been dropping on us. And look, man, it's too early in the morning to have existential dread like that.
Well, the thing is, me and J-Mac have a bit where every time Hunbats gets locked in, we always just say, like, hey, man, just so you know, it is not wise to put a basket on your head because you will be eaten by a dog or something like that. I think that's what he says. So we just go back and forth with that one, but now we got to add the Cernunnos line to the mix. And I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want to. No, it's going to be maybe some wild back and forths for him. Cabrakan gets banned out by the Wargs this time around. And so maybe a little worried. You had mentioned, the Soul, the Pele, the Ra, and maybe not necessarily feeling great into the Ymir. I think Cernunnos was feeling the same way. Anything that can throw some walls up. Also maybe speaks as to what the Wargs are maybe planning here in the future. Fenrir is the answer back from the Tanuki, trying to isolate some of those jungle picks of Sam. And you have to imagine if they banned it in the top 3 last game and they're looking at the jungle, the next one presumably would need to be a Mercury or something like that, unless they think they can handle it a little better with the composition they have right now.
Definitely could be. I think that Merc is a decent matchup into Raw. I mean, you don't have to worry too much about your ult getting juked because Raw just kind of stands there.
He drifts lazily to the left.
Yeah, he's either going left or right. You get a 50-50 chance at that point. But again, lots of CC needs to be taken away here. That's why we see the Atlas and the Cabrakan gone. That is going to take away a big portion of what the Tanuki want to do. I have seen promise on the Terra a few times. They already have a lot of healing on this comp, so maybe they don't want to double dip too far. And it will be the Susano lock in here for the Wargs. That is a good pick. Has a great time into both of these mages if you can, weave in and out with the jet stream and just try and 100-0 them. But I think that Pele can definitely find Susano in the early and try and track him down. That is some of that CC I've been looking for, as well as just great early pressure. If you're trying to play through Soul, Horus is one of the best early game supports you can really get.
Especially, I mean, you factor in some of the shards, and admittedly we haven't been seeing it as much lately. A lot of cooldown shards have been the maybe focus for pretty much every role, outside of some attack speed shards, things like that. Horus has built-in prot shred flat statement, so it's really a little more convenient. Do you think, though, you had mentioned it, like the CC, Pele with the knock-up feels kind of nice, but Horus is still single target. Does that cause trouble later on, or do you think that they're going to be able to overcome that with the damage they have?
Well,
I guess maybe the Chaac.
I was going to say, I'm hoping to see a big CC ultimate here, and that is what Chaac provides.
It's almost all he provides.
Yeah, that is pretty much. He provides slows and that ult. What I will say is you got a good time in lane, depending on who Aqua locks in here, assuming that he's none of these picks, which I think is fair. And yeah, the team fight of the Tanuki, man, it's looking a little rough, to be honest. As you said, a lot of single target. If Ra is not consistently sniping off the Horus, from behind, this comp gets rolled. Like, the Tanuki cannot fight back from behind. They just have to hope they get a snipe and go with it. But so many of these gods do almost nothing from behind, whereas the Wargs, they can sit back, they can play off their team fight.
Yeah.
They just have to deal with the anti-heal that is surely going to be coming through, because I see 5 gods with healing in their kit. And Chulainn is going to have that built-in anti-heal that will help them out. I'm thinking the Tanuki want to snowball from early. That's the call. I think duo lane is probably the lane to do it. You leave Chaac alone on an island, and you really hope that Soul, Pele, and Horus start to pop off like pre-5.
Just get them going as fast as possible. Aquarius just had a phenomenal game. I mean, you had mentioned the anti-heal for the Chulainn, but really everything else, right? The CC, the dive that Aquarius had, that plus a Ymir wall, plus the damage follow-up. I mean, Merlin, Kern, Susano is a very dangerous 3 in the middle. Feels like, as you had mentioned, that the Wargs may be more well-rounded and can fight from behind, but if the Tanuki are able to get ahead, it seemed like you could maybe err in the way of some good raw snipes, some good soul play, higher execution threshold for him to make it work, though.
Yeah, it's the Wargs can fight from behind. The Tanuki have to fight from ahead. That's what we're looking at here, because it's just the single target CC, the fall off of Ra if he doesn't have constant babysitting, like he would just get essentially killed. We saw how well Aqua and Samper Soccer were diving the backline last game. Chulainn and Susano can do that just as well, and Ra is even less safe at this point. So I'm thinking, once again, early aggression probably slotted towards duo. and a lot of weight on Grave's shoulders.
A lot, like you said, for the jungler specifically. Sam might not have the big... Well, actually, he does still have a big AoE ultimate. I was thinking not in the fear no evil sense, but in the I'm going to knock you all up and then kill you dead sense. That's what Susano is going to be bringing to the table. Plus, you get the polymorph. I don't know, Trelly. I'm inclined to agree with you here, where it just feels like the Wargs have one that's a little more well-rounded. From ahead it works, from behind it works, at even it works, in team fights it works incredibly well. And so a lot of pressure on Grave to get things going. You had highlighted the duo lane. And I guess that's the matchup I would love to zoom in on. Sol versus Kern in terms of clear, as well as Horus versus Ymir. I mean, both of them have a stun. One hits more targets than the other. But is there enough backup from these carries to make it lean one way or the other?
I mean, I would say if the Tanuki are using their CC effectively, they should be able to just walk up to lane. They're not going to win any 2v2s because I don't think the Wargs, unless Gamma just gets a massive freeze, are going to feel that confident fighting anyways. There's a lot of CC. There's a lot of sustain built into Tanuki's kit. But we saw Sam come over for an early gank last time,
True.
or at least attempt to. He sort of just walked around, and Grave still has that ability, so I imagine not too much pressure throughout, maybe just sitting at the halfway point until those junglers make their way over to duo.
And it seems like it might be easier this time around for him to stick to everyone that's there, right? Sol, Horus, they have safety mechanisms, but Sol kind of peters out a little bit away, and Horus relies on somebody else being over there already. And so definitely some opportunities for Susano to chase them down. We'll see how this one shakes out. Will the Wargs close it out 2-0, or will the Tanuki surprise us? We'll see here in game number 2.
And it's the Yomi Tanuki bringing some pocket picks to game number 2 up against Niflheim Wargs. A raw mid, a Horus support for Promise, and then Chaac for Rundas. We've been seeing almost exclusively Jormungandr from the players so far this weekend. Any of the matchups that we've seen so far from his competitive, but swapping it up for the Chaac in game number 2 to go up against Aquarius' Chulainn. Mifflin, I know you're not the biggest on Chaac, but how do you feel about him maybe in year 10 in the solo lane matchup?
I prefer Chaac in solo almost always. I think I'm generally fine with that. Has decent scaling. If you want to go down the mitigation tree, he's going to become nearly unkillable. Massive teamfight disruption ultimate as well. So no complaints really here. Maybe the only issue is it's possible that Chaac could struggle against ganks if Sanford Soccer rotates through early, especially with this Transcendent start, assumed Transcendence. That would make it very difficult for Chaac to survive some of those engagements, especially around level 5. But with the propensities Sanford Soccer showed in previous matches, to just go ahead and rotate over towards that duo lane, I think you're allowed to go slightly greedy in the build. And once you have Transcendence, it essentially is just another defensive item, considering how heavily your heal scales with power. So long answer short. Yeah, I'm alright with it. Chaac solo, alright.
Chaac solo, cool. Chaac jungle, maybe not so much from what we've seen in the past.
So not good.
Not that great. You can just go maybe another assassin in the build. Speaking of assassins, though, Pele for Grave. We've seen what Pele is able to do with some early game damage in previous seasons. We've even been able to see what Pele can do this season so far in year 10. Then we do have Sam going over towards the Susano. Another one that feels like it could just be something that you're maybe kind of going towards because you need a decent assassin, some decent CCing. But this also feels like, when you talk about top 3 Sam for soccer gods, along with the Hunbats, this Susano is definitely one I always kind of see him as.
Yeah, Sanford Soccer is like Hunbots, it's Susano, I'll throw a Thanatos in there.
And a Mercury.
And a Mercury, absolutely. And then you got it. That's the 4-piece combo that composes a Sanford Soccer. It's what the 4 stands for, actually.
Oh, is that what the 4 is?
Yeah.
I've never actually asked him what the 4 meant, but now I don't need to. I've got the information from Mifflin. Once again, this time it's a rotation from Sam over towards the dual lane to try and get things going for Gamma and Stuart. Said it may just be a skirmish by the shield buff as Grave has revealed himself on the map towards Sam. Could be having a 3v3 brawl in duo. Gamma already half HP, slowed down as well. Grave goes through, gets frozen instantly. Sam goes in to try and stop the wall. Is not enough to hold them back. And Grave and the Yomi Tanuki once again will strike first blood.
Man, if it's a meditation or a shell start for Gamma, he lives there just because that freeze was so clean. Actually catches the knockup from Grave, keeps him just out of range. But because he had elected to pick up that horrific, maybe got eyes a bit more for kill pressure rather than actually playing defensively. Wasn't quite able to work his way out of there. And now it's a magical hunter with a lead up against Stu on a standard hunter, which is just not going to feel great. I mean, you can see how quickly he's already starting to work through those bastions. 150 gold infusion this early in the game. absolutely ridiculous. And considering Grave was struggling to keep up with San Francisco and just macro farm, getting first blood to his name, a great start.
A wrap back around for Grave. Not sure he was spotted on the ward there, but maybe got spotted by Gamma as he was standing in the jungle. Gamma will now leave. Shirley walks over the ward. Actually, no, it seems that ward may have just faded in time. Promise misses the dash, but Stuart feeds preemptively just in case it was going to land towards him. Instead, now it'll be both bastions removed from Stuart's tower, and maybe a purple buff stolen by Grave, who is still stuck around to the side of the map. Shinigami's going to drag the minions in with him to try and go for this one. Only Gamma there to try and stop, but just too much damage from the Yomi Tanuki, able to steal yet another buff out.
Yeah, San Francisco, privy to it, steals away the speed buff and potentially the red buff as well. Can't let it get into that tower. XD level 5 has got the secure. Won't be using it this time either. So San Francisco, in trade of his own team's purple buff, takes both speed and red away from Yomi Tanuki. A small win there, to be sure. Considering how much time Grave had spent on the left side of the map as well. Just not farming up, not splitting waves either. Should have cut the majority of the lead that Grave had established just from getting the first blood.
And we see the Chaac versus Chulainn, and something that Aquarius did last game. Not sure if it was just an answer to the fact that it was a damaged Jormungandr that he was going against, or if it's something that Aquarius just likes on this god in particular. It was Soul Leader last game, seems to be the answer yet again for Aqua. And I'm wondering if that's just a call because he's seeing that his opposition is going damage, that he knows that maybe that's not him to go towards.
Just some sustain, some power, the ability to stick around in the lane a little bit longer. I think Soul Eater is just generally very good. If you are a Soul Eater god in Season 10, it just gives you so much lane bully potential. If you're worried about matching sustain with Rundas, and you should be up against a Chaac worried about that sustain, Soul Eater is just about the only option Aqua's got here. So no question marks from me there. And it slows down your tankiness a bit, but by the time you're 2-3 items deep, you're already incredibly tanky, very survivable, able to get in that back line with relative ease. And for the most part, what we've seen from Soul Laners is, hey, I'll hang out in my lane until level 20, and then I'll go get involved later on, right? It hasn't been exactly that early rotation meta that we had seen established in Season 9, where it was, which Soul Laner's better? It's the one that gets to the gold free first. Now it's, which Soul Laner's better? It's the one that's farmed up and has the more impact in the team fight.
Well, speaking of being able to pick up some early items, Shinigami now Telkine's online, so Stuart, who is already having trouble boxing up against this Soul, will now have an even greater struggle, considering he's only got that Tier 2 balance blade online. Promise still sticking around inside the jungle. Goes for the stun on Gamma. Stellar Burst to follow up. And Gamma will drop the wall down to block off the path of one, but Promise is going to go in with the ultimate. Grave on the way. Nowhere for Gamma to go. Will end up losing his life up in this trade. Let's give a second one over to Grave and the Yomi Tanuki. But even with those 2 kills, the Tanuki haven't really been pulling much of a lead.
No, not quite just yet. It's a tale of 2 games, right? Because San Francisco is doing the exact same thing all over again. Give me your speed, give me your red buff, enjoy my purple. Gotta play wary of this, though. XD was spotted on his rotation out of mid. The Wargs have to realize this is the call. Gold Fury, all of a sudden now you're starting to build up your lead. Yomi Tanuki feeling much better about their odds and the time and investment that they've made on the left-hand side of the map. I don't think there's much fight back there. Crimson isn't playing a pick that's really got steal potential. Doesn't have a snipe ability. Isn't going to out-confirm a Raw. Can't really walk in safely. Same with Stu. With Gamma off the map, he doesn't want to walk in either. So I think probably the proper response from the Wargs is just go ahead and not try and contest the Gold Fury and instead take your small wins on the map. But you can't allow that to continue. You can't allow Gamma to be accosted this entire game. It's high committal plays from Yomi Tanuki at that. It costs Grave his ultimate. Promise has to use his ultimate as well. I believe Grave had used his blink in that situation. If San Francisco is able to start making the rotations over towards the left side with how much Yomi Tanuki are using, turnaround plays certainly on the books here. And Susano, very good at peeling for his allies, very good at just catching out anybody, highly mobile, can chase out these kills. I'd like to see Sam spend a little bit more time in the fight rather than invading.
Gotta imagine that once Sam starts to get involved, it maybe turns the tides a little bit more for the Niflheim Wargs. I mean, we saw the early 3v3 in duo. That one didn't favor them too much, but Aqua being rotated on by Grave. Does have the ultimate. Is able to jump away from what Rundas has. Grave popped his own. Not enough sustain for Aqua. He will fall to the damage of 2. Sam on the way. Can he find the pick on the Rundas? Will blink in. Gets the pull back, but the teleport from the Axe will make sure to get Rundas out of danger, and Sam will not come up with anything on this gank.
Yeah, goes for the auto cancel there. I think if he just goes straight into the third ability, you're stuck to him. Rundas has no escape there, but because he tries to maximize his damage output, a bit slow, wasn't quite able to connect that slipstream, and Rundas just works his way out of there. Grave has had just much more impact on map so far this game. The jungler for Yomi Tanuki just active on the both side lanes now, really keeping his laners' heads above water, facilitating these objectives. Sanford Soccer playing a much more selfish game this time around. Has given him some farm, keeps him in parity with Grave, but the rest of his team suffering for it.
We see Crimson once again going for the tablet rush compared to the Book of Thoth for XD. It doesn't seem like he's going to go into a tablet at all, potentially. Second item, going into the Ancient Blade tree. Do you think there's going to be a Lotus Sickle pickup for the Raw early?
I wonder. You have so much healing on the side of Yomi Tanuki, you got to assume that there's going to be a pretty heavy commitment to anti-heal from the Warg. So further committing into healing, I think, and sacrificing your damage, probably not ideal, but I can't imagine anything else he's building from that tree. Keep your eyes on it. I'm curious to see.
Stuart goes in aggressively with the dash. Shinigami pulled back, but the Horus ult won't be in time. Shinigami gets dropped right before the drop goes through for Promise, unable to save his dual laner in time. The Niflheim Wargs now on the board. A kill to Stu will give him a little bit of pressure up in this dual lane.
Yeah, just Promise tries to get a little bit too much space there. If he cancels the ultimate a bit earlier, you don't get all the way to the tower, but you still certainly find yourself in a much better situation than that. Or even just use the shell beforehand, right? Give your ally a little bit more HP to play with. Instead, it's a pick for the Wargs who finally put themselves on the board, but with Gold Fury already off the map, the only thing they can really grab is maybe their second purple buff of the game and the neutral camp on the left-hand side. Gold Fury will be back up in the next 30 seconds. I imagine we see a significant grouping from the Wargs this time around. Yomi Tanuki haven't exactly got the lead, but the Wargs are still in arm's reach as far as gold and experience are concerned, and even have experienced leads here or there. Crimson, who has been allowed to free farm both games now, has established about a half-level, one-level lead both games in a row.
I gotta say, though, to me it's a little impressive that Gamma's stuck around in this dual lane with Stu for as long as he has. Feels like Gamma hasn't gone further than this point on the map until this point. And he's back to even with Promise, and Stuart hasn't faulted because of it. He's been able to even get ahead in farm compared to Shinigami. So impressive stuff from the Wargs dual lane to be able to find a lead. But the Oni Fury pulled, being kited around by Promise. He goes in with the dash, but immediately frozen out as soon as it's done. Aqua has rotated this side of map, triple wall to hold 3 back, but it's an immediate shell to get out. Stuart dashes, lose out on his beads, but the ultimate of the Horse has brought the team right back in. Rundas is low, and Sam is gone. The snipe, plus the damage from Grave is enough to take the jungler out. But Aquarius is still 3/4 HP, and with Gamma on the walk up, they could find one. Could be a good turnaround for the Wargs, but they're come up empty-handed.
Yeah, we need anti-heal, and we need it now. It's got to be the cause for the Niflheim Wargs as Aqua takes some damage on the way out. Good CC immunity. Should buy his life. But it's an objective now for Yomi Tanuki that should go cleanly. It's just healing for Rundas, healing for Grave, Promise, Shinigami, XD. They've all got it some way, one way or another. And there is no answers just yet from the Wargs. Keep your eyes on Pestilence. Keep your eyes on Contagions. I'm thinking Brawler's Beat Sticks. Divine Ruins need to get purchased sooner rather than later. Because Yomi Tanuki, I think based off positioning and damage taken, they lost that fight twice. If that healing is even mitigated, cut by 20, 30%, that fight goes much cleaner to the Niflheim Wargs. Just take into account how Gamma had played it. Uses the ultimate to immune Fracture, immediately throws up the freeze, isolates the team fight, throws up a 3-man wall within a 2-second time frame, and strips the shell. Those are hero plays from your support that need to go rewarded. But because there's so much to sustain on Tanuki, they back up, they sit in raw heal, and they say, hey, you just can't kill us.
Well, one piece of the anti-heal puzzle has been fixed so far. Sanford Soccer now with the Brawlers. Gotta imagine for Crimson, it's going to be Divine Ruin in that third slot. It would be criminal if he didn't for what he's going up against. But XD double dipping into defense now. Does pick up the Lotus Sickle. And now going in towards the Breastplate tree as well. Not going to be a lot of damage coming from XD, but going to have a lot of ability spam more than anything as the game goes on.
We'll have decent ability spam, but I think looking at the builds as they are, XD isn't going to suffer too much going down this utility tree. Aqua has 0 magic defense. The only one that's got any is Gamma, and you're not exactly focusing the Ymir anymore. And if you are, it's not exactly Ra's job to do it. That's Shi'igami with the Shred or Grave with his burst potential. So if XD's hitting literally anybody else, I mean, you're still putting up pretty decent numbers.
Rundas goes for the ultimate, immune out by Aquarius. Knock up from the Typhoon is good. And the Niflheim Wargs will fight back in, but Grave is still chasing down Sam. A lot of damage coming through, and the Horus ultimate to land in. It brings XD along with him, and it's not even necessary, though, as promised. Deals the damage to make it a 1-for-1. Snipe off the mark by XD, but that will force Aquarius back, and potentially a Tier 1 tower to go as well with the Tanuki.
Should be a Tier 1 trade in mid, though. Shi'igami can't make that rotation. Crimson grabs that one on his own. Should spell the end of the fight at that. There's not much more you can do on the map on the right-hand side. So at the end of the day, 1-for-1 trade. Losing out on Susano's life, though, I think a pretty significant loss. Regardless, though, it's the Wargs who still sit with a lead. It's not gold, it's experience, and that's the only lead on map. 30 gold, 300 gold here or there. Not exactly significant. The 1,000 experience, I think, certainly much more so. And it's coming from the carries of the Niflheim Wargs, the backline, both Crimson and Stu, getting the better end of the farm. Surprised to see it at that. I mean, the narratives we've seen from all the Hunter players, all the current SPL players, is that Magical Hunters simply jam lane just better. They just outbox in the early, they scale well into the late, but I wouldn't believe it considering the position that we've seen from Stu so far. Hasn't been forced back a single time. Instead, it's actually him pulling out his lane opponent.
Sam misses on the pull, and I think I was making a face out there. I don't know if you caught him, I was looking over at Crimson's build. It's not Divine next item. Going towards Soul Gem.
It's got to be Soul Gem, right? That's tough.
Gotta imagine so, but that means we're looking at 4th item Divine, maybe, unless he's going for the exact same build that he did in Game 1, which would put Soul Reaver to be the 4th item after that one in the build. So maybe no Divine Ruin, and maybe that's an answer to the fact that it's only 1 full damage item up for XD, so his healing isn't scaling up. But I just gotta imagine, man, I see a Ra, I see a Horus, I see pretty much that entire squad. I'm screaming anti-heal with you, so surprised to see that Crimson's not going towards it.
Yeah, maybe that indicates that Gamma will be going Ankh in next slot, and if that's the case, you need him level 12, and you need him level 12 before this Gold Fury spawns. Anti-heal needs to get stacked up. This Gold Fury fight can't happen with just a Brawler's Beat Stick. You gotta think, unless the Niflheim Wargs find a pick going into it, but easier said than done. Graves got Magi's and is already disrupting the back.
Oh, the wall will block him out. Goes in for the ultimate, gets
Wow.
the backup from Promise. The snipe just off the mark by XD. Gamma will get hit by the knockup of the damage, but Aquarius has found a pick in the backline. Grave is gone, and Shi'igami low as well. Root is good, and the war cry after. It is a double kill for Aquarius. He continues his charge in. A triple ult by Rundas, but that is not enough. The wall just barely off the mark by Gamma to lock in the Chaac. But that's 2 kills for the Wargs before this Fury spawns.
Maybe the Brawler's Beat Stick was enough. I think it's probably more got to do that Yomi Tanuki group up, not as 5, but instead as 3, and get caught in the engagement. Nearly shut down Sam for Soccer just off the mark with XD's ultimate. Could have changed up that entire fight. But now it's Niflheim Wargs with the proactive element, grouped up around the Gold Fury, down to 50%. Steal potential low from Yomi Tanuki, so a disengage in the cards. And it will go over to the Chaos side. Clean play. It had to be a pick. If it was a 5-on-5 engagement, you just got to favor the sustain. So the Wargs don't give it over and instead take the fight beforehand. Yomi Tanuki just weren't ready.
Man, Crimson is playing so aggressive on this Merlin, nearly frontlining at the beginning of that Fury pull. Actually uses his flicker just to get away from the dash of Promise, getting away from that fracture, and then turning around, and what does he do? Instead of walking back to the team, he still throws a couple more abilities. We'll see if it comes up positive here. The Tanuki do get the Pyromancer and immediately disengage. They might not even be able to have time to pick up that Runic Bomb that gets dropped by it instead. It seems that Gamma will be able to puppy guard that one for his team. And Stuart, left alone on the left side of the map, will take a Tier 1 tower in trade.
Yeah, Stu just spending his time farming up and making sure he's a threat to the front line when the time comes. Fire Giant seems to have been pushed back. Back in Season 9, it was 18 minutes every single time. Nowadays, it's close to that 20-minute mark. We start to see these teams group up. With the lead that is now slowly starting to establish for the Niflheim Wargs, the power spikes that are coming as well, you got to think they want to start forcing these engagements. Even looking at Aqua, Prophetic Cloak in that 3rd slot. You got to stack it one way or another, and the only way to do it is get involved in these fights. Already has a level lead, so Aqua could decide, just go ahead, leave the lane, start pushing elsewhere. But it's a suffering from success situation for the Niflheim Wargs. If you want to force a fight, generally at this time frame, it's let's take the mid tower, the tier 1. Let's group up on duo, fight there. But with both of those towers already off the map, you don't exactly want a 5-stack on the tier 1 on right. That'd be such a committal rotation for the carries of the Niflheim Wargs. Thinks this is just a situation where the game's going to have to slow down, barring jungler engagements. Those guys are always the wild card, could catch just about anybody else out on the map. And one's got a bit more threat generated now than the other. I really like Sam4Soccer's build. Feels like he's got massive 100-0 potential, whereas Grave, by nature of the CC that the Niflheim Wargs have drafted, forced to go for a little bit more utility in his own build, should be a bit mitigated in his efficacy, at least as a solo agent. If he's got an ally, I mean, Pele's got enough damage in the kit that you can drop someone down to about 10% regardless.
Well, it is an Ankh from Gamma now. He's hit his level 12 mark, now 13. Picks up that anti-heal. Still going into the book for Crimson, so double downing on making sure to get those tablet stacks and get the most value that you can from them. So no anti-heal unless he goes at last item in the build now, but last game is any indication, probably not. It's going to come down a lot to just Sam and Gamma to be able to deal with all the healing that the Yomi Tanuki have. Didn't seem to affect him too much in that last fight, but as you said, it wasn't really a true 5v5. It was a very scattered engagement by both squads, where it was the Tanuki who suffered because of it, with 2 kills going to the Wargs. But with only a 2,000 gold lead for the Niflheim Wargs, it's not much of one to play with, especially with the confidence that the Tanuki have had to start these fights.
Yeah, Tanuki playing very aggressively, but it's been Grave starting up every fight. Grave purchases Magi's because he wants to walk in first. He wants to be first in, last out. Let Promise start your engagement. Have Rundas come through. Blink Chaac engage. Very powerful. Functions similarly to a Blink Chulainn. Get the knock up, a massive silence, and all of a sudden the rest of your team's given a window where they can fight. But for the most part, it's Rundas trying to keep up with Grave, or Promise doing the exact same thing. I think for now, Grave's best use of his time likely is trying to isolate Sam4Soccer or catch Crimson. Catching Crimson, easier said than done. He's gone down the I'm going to just kill him. Can't heal when you're dead strat, right? So that's a massive burst already for the Merlin. So instead, I think Grave probably would prefer to take that 1v1 with Sam. Remove the Typhoon from the team fight, and all of a sudden the Niflheim Wargs are much easier to collapse on. Yomi Tanuki, 5-stack around the Gold Fury. Niflheim Wargs, similar position. It's actually a back from Aqua. But with teleport available, should the need arise, he'll be there quickly.
And it seems that he might just be channeling that one in to rejoin the team. But where will Aquarius port back in? It's actually behind enemy lines. I'm not sure they even recognize it. Aqua goes in, finds the triple knockup. The double shot for some anti-heal. Snipe goes through for XD, but it doesn't feel like it hit anybody there. Sam's being chased by Grave in the backline, though, and Sam is gone, but so is Grave. It's a 1-for-1 trade out, but make it 2 as Gamma's ult is channeled through. And Aquarius with that transformation. Promise trying to dash on out, but with that shell down, the wall is going to ring true for Niflheim Wargs. They just can't get the damage out in time to find it out there. XD able to live through, but Crimson will knock him down, and that's a 3-for-1 for the Niflheim Wargs.
I love the idea from Grave. Does exactly what I called for. Jumps onto Sam4Soccer, makes sure that Typhoon is forced channeled defensively, but still hits 3, so couldn't quite do it enough. Sam4Soccer finds his value regardless of dying. And the Niflheim Wargs rallying behind the damage of EruptCrimson, able to shut down Yomi Tanuki through their healing. Great usage of Aqua's abilities, applies that anti-heal inherent to the kit, as well as Gamma with those walls, just making it so difficult for the Tanuki to maneuver the map. Even in a situation like that, Shipigami was able to disapparate through the wall, but just leaves his allies isolated and can't return any damage through it with this auto-attack build. An ultimate down. The Niflheim Wargs show their veteranship once more. Just once it's gotten to this team fight phase, they seem to have a more firm grip on how they want to approach things.
And Aqua's starting out that fight with a teleport to the backline that I guess there's just no vision back there for them to have caught. And by the time they realized Aqua was there, well, he was already triple knocking up there. Promise caught out by the wall. Snipe only tickles Gamma, but Promise is going to be forced out of this fight all the way back to base. The Horus may need to go. So I'm not sure Promise was trying to stick around for too much of a fight. Fire Giant pulled, by the Wargs. Promise still sticking around. Will dash over to Shi'igami to avoid the damage from Crimson. This Fire Giant is not going fast. Crimson and Stuart not enough damage to output this one for themselves, especially with them tanking it up.
Yeah, I don't think Crimson was willing to dedicate his actual kit to the Fire Giant. It was same as last game. The Niflheim Wargs, they'd much prefer to take the fight before the objective. Yomi Tanuki, though, showing some discipline, realized they don't need to walk into the pit if the Fire Giant isn't taking damage. There was not enough threat generated. It's a thin line the Niflheim Wargs have to play when it comes to actually dropping the Fire Giant at like critical territory, where it forces your opponent to actually walk in. Because when you look at their comp, who's confirming it? Nobody. Maybe Shards of Ice from Gamma with one of the hardest hitting abilities, assuming he's putting points into it. Otherwise, you've got a lot of tick damage from Merlin. Maybe Typhoon from Sam for Soccer could do it, but you're worried about Shi'igami's ultimate. You're worried about XD's ultimate as well. So in situations like that, the Wargs, I think, right to look for the kills first. Yomi Tanuki won't give them over easily. So it's a reset back to neutral. Collect your buff, spend your gold, regroup again. I love the call from the Wargs to at least try and generate that pressure, generate that threat. So long as they're grouped up on fire, Tanuki still have to stand in range. And if they're doing that, they're not farming, which only favors the team with the lead, which is currently the Wargs.
Yeah, the Wargs is about a 4,000 gold lead so far, but as far as XP is concerned, Graves got a 2-level lead up over Sam. It's 2 for Crimson over XD to kind of mitigate that one out. It's mostly the lead of the dual lane and the side lanes more than anything for the Wargs that have really gone unanswered. 4-1 is Aquarius on the Chulainn. He'll teleport in to rejoin around the Fire Giant pit. Promise at full HP this time around for the objective, but it's a slow rotation in from the Tanuki to answer back. Rundas walks up, gets frozen instantly, and all the damage in the world from Crimson. The ult goes through, but it's not going to get too much value. Pulled back in by Sam. Snipe is there, but Stuart has to aegis away from Grave, who is terrorizing the backline himself, but Sam has already found one pig, and Aquarius transforms in the middle of 3, finds 4 with the ult, and pushes down Grave. It is a rampage for the Chulainn, and maybe one for Sam. He pulls back XD, but took a little too much damage. Instead, it'll be Aqua to charge into the backline. That's a double, and make it a triple for Aqua.
Crimson's got the 1v1 up against Shi'igami, but make it 2. Aqua, D-transform. Full kit available, and plenty of damage to play with. A good Aegis. Should buy some time, but you're not outrunning Chulainn.
He is just going to W key him all the way to the Phoenix. One more shot, unofficial quad for Aquarius, and a Fire Giant for the entirety of the Niflheim Wargs. All 5 get a benefit from the buff, but it's Aqua who gets the biggest benefit from all those kills.
This is what I'm talking about, man. Yomi Tanuki, they have to show up to the Fire Giant. You can't give it over for free. Niflheim Wargs, just by grouping up, force Rundas to walk in. He has to face check it because they haven't got vision in the pit. If the freeze connects before Rundas goes into the ultimate, you're not tanky. You're not walking out of there. You're not surviving the full combo from Crimson. Drops him down to 20%. I had thought maybe Yomi Tanuki were going to be able to punish the Wargs for playing greedily around their Ankh. Gamma actually holds it until he was on disengage. Survives a real long time, but not long enough. And the rest of the Tanuki not in range to follow up. So Rundas goes down essentially for free. And from there, Aqua, as the lone tanky frontliner on the map, was able to run amok in that backline. Yomi Tanuki got to find an answer soon. I wonder, with this heavy defense stack, with a mitigation stack up as well, maybe Sunder's got to be the option to deal with these soul laners, because we saw the damage output Shi'igami had. It wasn't small, but not enough to turn it around on his own. If he has just a little bit more defense shred from the rest of his team, could be enough. But now a Spear Robe, it might be a little too late.
Also doesn't help that, Aquarius is consistently finding 3- and 4-man ultimates in the middle of all these fights as well to start them out, then a transform and drops another one immediately after that one. Just so much AoE damage that he's really outputting here. Grave almost found the pick into Sam in the backline, as well as XD threw the snipe out, nearly took out Stuart at one point, but maybe at this point you gotta put a little attention towards this Chulainn. Grave will port out instantly, nearly dies to the damage of Crimson, but he'll make it out after losing his Magi's and his ult.
Yeah, that is not an ideal situation with the Niflheim Wargs already knocking on the door of your base. No Magi's, no CC immunity, no ultimate available. Grave, AoE, dampened in this next fight. The Wargs now don't have to worry about it. Grave was the answer to Sam, and now Sam doesn't have to worry about a question being asked.
A better siege for the Wargs as far as range damage to the bird this time. Stuart on a traditional hunter compared to the Freya last game. So we see the full 5 grouping of the Wargs. Aquarius to the back, finds 3 with the ult yet again. Double freeze by Gamma. Rundas is trying to zone them out, but Sam and Aqua in the backline have completely wiped the carry off the map. Shi'igami out, promised an XD at critical HP. Aqua just barely missed the timing to take out the support, but it's a left side bird +1 for the Wargs.
Make it a mid-Phoenix as well, given the time. Aqua can tank this up nearly indefinitely. Grave looks for the 1v1 up against Crimson, finds it, but Sam nearby.
Grave able to get the 1. Sam is able to find his way out, but Grave goes to an early death for himself. Sam for Soccer still fighting back, gets Rundas, who gets walled off by the Ymir, able to teleport over the wall. The mid lane Phoenix has been spared, but it cost a couple of lives of the Tanuki to do so.
Excuse me for calling for Sam for Soccer to do it. It's got to be Aqua top to bottom. 10, 1, and 3, 13 of the 14 affected kills out of the solo lane. Dude's
That's
not
unheard
involved.
of.
He's not involved for half the match. First 15 minutes, we didn't see Aqua.
He's the jungler now.
Yeah, the second he got there, he did everything. The damage output, the survivability. Solo got to be feeling like a good role right now. There's just no answers from Yomi Tanuki. The mid laner going for this utility build. Can't exactly burn him. You don't really want it to all be up to Shi'igami. Rundas does no damage to him. The support does just about no damage to him as well. And even Grave having to slowly dip into a bit of utility. Takes a hit to his own DPS. Aqua's going to run amok. I don't see an answer on board right now. Buy some time. You might find one in the next 5 or 6 minutes, but I'd be surprised if this game goes that long.
I really wish we could see, of those prophetic stacks that he has, how much of those were invested into each of the different damage types. Because it just feels like the magics are doing nothing to him. Feels like the physicals are still doing nothing to him. I wonder how much of an even split he's got there. But there is no answer for this Fire Giant from the Tanuki. The closest person there is Promise, but he's not going to risk his life to stop this objective. Almost in hands time, but not quite. The Niflheim Wargs will grab fire and march up the right lane.
So how does the base defense look for Yomi Tanuki? Assuming there's no picks beforehand. You've got a double mage, keep the minion wave at bay relatively easily. But the damage output being so lacking means Aqua can just tank up for just about forever. And if it's not up to him, Gamma can do the exact same thing. It's an easy walk up. Where's the answer?
Well, you gotta deal with Aquarius, because right now he is bullying Shi'igami all by himself. Sam nearly takes out 2 together, but Rundas is able to take out Sam 1-for-1. XD does manage to get the revive off with the alternate timeline, but Aquarius' health bar hasn't moved. It is still full and continuing to climb back up. Solo lane Phoenix gone, only the mid one still left standing, but with the death of their jungler, the Wargs will back up.
Man, Aqua's playing like he's just a Ymir wall. You can't walk through him, and you can't kill him either.
Did he put God mode on?
I don't know. Someone's got to check this guy out. This is absolutely ridiculous, the amount of space he's created. Sam tries to get involved this time around. I think you should just leave it up to Aqua at this point. Use your Typhoon from a distance, because 31-22 is where this man's HP is going to remain for the rest of this match. I don't imagine it moves again. It is criminal how much space and how much time and how much damage he's put out so far. Aqua putting on an absolute clinic in this match. Yomi Tanuki, though, silver linings where they lie. Left side Phoenix should respawn by the time Fire Giant does. Right side Phoenix the easiest to defend while simultaneously looking towards the neutral objective. Titan goes undamaged. You don't have to worry about backdoor attempts rather. The Wargs haven't quite been able to close this one out, but the gold lead has ballooned out of control. Experience no longer matters, but we're talking about elixirs going forward, and I don't want to see Aqua with an elixir of defense or an elixir. I don't want to see Aqua get any stronger than he is right now, if I'm being honest.
Cut off his item shop. This man can't buy anything more because it's already devastating for the Yomi Tanuki. He was in the middle of 4 people behind their Phoenix.
That's right.
And lost essentially no health.
I didn't see it move.
That entire way through. Whether that be some sustain from himself, the Fire Giant, doesn't matter. Aqua can do no wrong in these fights. He's got 4 seconds till blink, and I imagine once that cooldown is up, he is right back in. Rundas jumps into the back line, but that might be the worst decision this Chaac could make, because Aqua will continue running them down. Typhoon to the back line. Grave, well, Grave is gone. Aqua's still full HP. He finds the root on 2. Shield hits for XD, but so does the rest of his life. Immortal on the solo laner. 11 1-6. Might make it 12 up against Shi'igami. He is tanking the Titan. He is taking the damage from the remaining members of the Yomi Tanuki, but it's just not enough. I don't know what you got to do to get rid of Aqua, but if anything, just get him off this pig. Find something, because that's got to be what's answered first.
Shi'igami hit him for 90 in the last team fight of the game. Aqua turned around with his big, meaty claw and backhanded that guy for 170. What's the answer? He's tankier, he hits harder, and he's got more HP. Aqua creates infinite space. Giving over a great game. Didn't really have to worry about any jungle ganks coming his way. Farms up, gets involved, and does everything you could possibly want from your soul inner. Clean stuff, and that's what you need to see.
And maybe this is what the current SPL pros who have made it are saying is just let these soul laners farm up, get this mitigation build, because they're just essentially gods at that point. You can't kill them. They do more damage back to you. And so far, we haven't seen an answer to Aquarius in either of these two games by the Yomi Tanuki.
It's got to be Sunder, right? It's got to be Sunder.
Sunder.
It feels bad to have to buy a Sunder, but it's got to be Sunder.
True damage. Anything that you can do that guarantees
Tablet's pretty
true
good.
damage, maybe pick that up there. Niflheim Wargs look great in their first set of the week, and they move on to the winner's bracket. That's it for me and Miff on the cast. Throw it to the desk to break it down.
Well, thanks so much, J-Mac and Mifflin and Trelly. I think this one, there's two numbers, two stats out of this one that I think are the only ones that matter. Aqua's slash line and Aqua's damage mitigated number, whatever the hell that ends up being.
I mean, just for everyone at home, there's an item you can buy in mid lane that gives you true damage to people like that, like Aqua. I didn't see it purchased. I saw tank items on Raw, so they have no excuse. There's a reason Aqua goes unchecked, and I don't want any whatever. It's fine. I just know people will be like, no, Aqua's broken.
Yeah.
Anyone can build that item, you know. Guess who also had that item? Rundas. Did you see him die? I saw him die plenty of times because Crimson built the item. I'm done talking about it. It was a good game. Well played by the Wargs.
There you go. Wargs look good doing so. This is the thing that I think is going to be most interesting, watching the highlights. And more so, let's play the game of how long until it becomes just a highlight reel of Aquarius, which admittedly is gonna be pretty easy to do. Even from Gamma's perspective, you're starting to get Aquarius highlights. I mean, look, there's so much that goes right here for the team, and what is really amazing about it is that while Aquarius, I think, gets to stand at the forefront of it all because we saw the last 5 minutes of gameplay, you know why. I think there's also something to be said about how clean the rest of the team is playing to really facilitate this in a way that you're not that worried about it. I mean, you're getting huge deep dive team fight impact from Aquarius, Trelly. But that's not stopping anybody else. In fact, if anything, it's enabling the rest of the Wargs to do their job so freely that they don't have to worry about it.
Yep, it just seemed like, I mean, we have talked about it ad nauseum, but there was no answers for Aquarius that game, clearly. I think the entirety of the Wargs were like, we have a game plan, and then Aqua's like, I'm gonna just blink in, man. I can tank up Phoenix, I can tank up Titan, and I can take up all the damage in the world. It will not matter.
It was a little legitimately frightening how little damage the Titan was dealing to him. I mean, I saw the lowest I saw over the last 3 minutes of gameplay. The lowest I saw the health bar get for the Chulainn was with the Fury of all things. Like that was, and it went down and then immediately back up in order to pick things up. I think it was absolutely insane. A fun one to watch there from the Wargs. I'm sure the first of many, at least in their eyes, that are yet to come. But you don't have to take it from me. We got the Coach Neil Moss standing by for an interview.
Yeah, that's maybe the weirdest thing to say out of all this is Coach Neil Moss standing by with me, the coach of Niflheim Wargs. Congrats on your team finding the 2-0. Tell me kind of how it feels moving from, being on the battleground for the last X amount of years of gameplay that you've been doing it, to now being the coach for the team and watching them get this 2-0 to start out.
I mean, it's I miss playing a little bit, but at the same time, I've actually learned a lot being on the other side, just having the spectator point of view. It kind of gives you a little bit more clarity, right? You're not focusing so much on your individual play. So I think it's actually been a lot of fun just being on this side, and I think it's helping me study the game, and I'm just happy that I can be with these guys and help them out any way I can.
Yeah, I mean, so far, the team's looking pretty good out here. Kind of give me your thoughts so far on your team after watching their first matchup. They've got a whole long tournament to go through, 2 teams to qualify in. How you kind of feeling about the chances of your team so far this event?
I mean, these are kind of like the forgotten players of the SPL, but they're all insane. Just watching them practice, every single one of them deserves to be in the SPL, and it's just going to be about if we can have a good read on the meta, we can play how we know we can play, and just put everything together. So I feel really confident going forward. these guys know what they're doing. They've been there, done that. So I think it's just time for them to show up this weekend, and the rest will be history.
Yeah, and it's so weird, hearing you say the forgotten players. I mean, I look at some of the names on there. Sam for Soccer, who was a World's MVP at one point. You have Stuart, who was literally just in the World's Finals, making a way onto this team. One last question for you. One of your former coaches here, Chuckles, is in the event against you. Is he kind of your rival, the team that you want to beat out to try and make a spot in?
I mean, at the end of the day, we got to look out for ourselves, so I'd love to beat him. But if there's anyone else after we've qualified I want to win, it's that guy. So yeah, he deserves a spot. Best of luck to him unless he's against me. And I mean, I'm just in his head. I counter him. There's nothing he can do.
It's just too easy for Neil Ma and the Niflheim Wargs. Well, Neil, congrats on y'all's 2-0 win. I'll let you get back with the team. We'll throw it back to the desk.
Yeah, I don't know. Normally, I'd say like this is the point where you can go and maybe do some VOD review. The last game is just going to be like, hey, maybe we should let Aqua do this again. Like that's pretty much the review that's going to come from that one. No, it's a good game from them, and you can hear good words there from Coach Neil Ma. I mean, a lot of focus on the fact that these guys are really good. Right. Like we know, and we all know that. That's part of the reason that if you were looking at predictions tier lists for this tournament, the Wargs were up at the top because you've got just 5 plus 6 if you add in the coach. Really, really good heads on guys that are really good at the game and a good hand on the ball here. So the Wargs are definitely going to be one of the tougher teams to beat, as they just showcased against the Tanuki. And unfortunately for the Scorpions, after their win yesterday, that is what they get next, is a fight up against the Wargs. But it's not all doom and gloom. Again, double elim, that's still up in the winner's bracket. Next, we're going to be going up to the Gilded Gladiators Xibalba Storm matchup. Winner of that will go on against the Hounds. Loser will get knocked down there to match number 10. And of course, what's going to be coming up next, it's actually played, if you're looking at the numbers, match 8 will be 3rd. And so that's the Titans taking on the Valkyries. And then we'll close out the day with the Sages and the Wardens. Next set, still in the winner's bracket. Nobody's going home. Last two, different story, Trelly. We're going to go down from 10 to 8 by the end of the day here. And now seeing some of these teams, where their success has been, what kind of performances we're getting out of them, it feels like the bar, even though it was already pretty high yesterday after the standard some of those teams set, somehow managed to get raised here, and it's going to get even more difficult as the week goes on.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that also at the beginning of this tournament there wasn't too much data to go off of, just scrims and like ranked play.
Yep.
As the tournament starts to continue, a meta starts to form, and maybe some god changes and build changes start to pitch up. So we'll have to see how it goes.
And there's a lot of Smite still to be seen and a lot still to watch, so we're going to kick it to a quick break, and when we get back, we got match number 2.